Everybody, Hannah Storm and Jay Harris with you just over 24 hours away from the start of the NFL draft. We're going to head out to Pittsburgh live throughout the hour with the very latest.
And Hannah, a developing story surrounding a Dallas star receiver. We're headed out live with the Cowboys with how on that could impact Dallas's draft plan.
And of course, the latest on Victor Wembanyama's head injury last night. What that could mean for the Spurs with that series heading to Portland, tied at a game apiece.
But we're going to begin in Pittsburgh, start of the 2026 NFL Draft, where the first round is set to begin at 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night on ESPN, ABC, and the NFL Network. And that is where we find our senior NFL insider, Adam Schefter. All right, Adam, you're at the draft, but there's a developing story we talked about in Dallas. What can you tell us about where things stand with George Pickens?
Well, Jay, moments ago, the Cowboys' executive vice president, Stephen Jones, told reporters that the Dallas Cowboys will not sign George Pickens to a long-term deal and that they will want him to play this season under the franchise tag. Now, again, George Pickens has not signed that franchise tag. There's no telling when he will sign it. He's certainly not going to participate in the Cowboys' offseason program. This could go well into training camp and potentially until the start of the season. We've seen players who are unhappy about not being signed to long-term deals withhold their services until right before the season begins. It's a $27.3 million franchise tag, which means essentially that George Pickens is making about $1.5 million a week. So to collect the first paycheck, he'd have to show up the week of the opener, and that certainly sounds like it's possible. Dallas will not sign him to a long-term deal. I think George Pickens had a sense this was coming, but the Cowboys made that known publicly today.
A story we will be following for sure, Adam Schefter. Okay, let's get back to the draft proper. Or many consider Jeremiah Love to be the best player available, but where he might go is anyone's guess. You reported he could go as high as 3 to Arizona. What more can you give us on Arizona's draft plans?
Listen, they have been playing things very close to the vest. Most people expect that Fernando Mendoza will go number 1 to the Las Vegas Raiders and the Jets will select the pass rusher of their choice at 2. That leaves the Arizona Cardinals sitting there at 3. In a perfect world, the Arizona Cardinals would like to trade back in the draft and have a team trade up for the pass rusher that doesn't go to the Jets. But if the Cardinals cannot find a trade partner, then there are people who believe that they will strongly consider Jeremiah Love, the Notre Dame running back, who some believe is the best player in this draft. Cardinals hired an offensive-minded head coach in Matt LaFleur. Jeremiah Love would bring instant sizzle and some excitement to a franchise that could use some of that right now. They did sign Tyler Algier in free agency during the offseason. They do have James Conner, but Jeremiah Love is so highly regarded that he could be a tough player to pass up if they cannot trade at a number 3. And by the way, if they don't take him, I'm sure Tennessee's just waiting to make a move on Love at 4.
Absolutely. We'll keep an eye on that. Hey, you're in Pittsburgh, so let's talk about the hometown team. Still no official word from Aaron Rodgers or whether he's coming back for year 22. So what, if any, impact will that have on Pittsburgh's draft plans?
Not much. I think they've operated all along as if they've known they might not have an answer from Aaron Rodgers, and if he would be coming back. I think they still believe he'll be back, and it would be a surprise if the Steelers used a first-round pick on Ty Simpson at the quarterback position, no matter how much the organization does like him. My understanding is Mike McCarthy and Ty Simpson had a real connection at the Combine. Ty Simpson, the son of a coach, Mike McCarthy, a career coach, they really hit it off. But it would be a surprise if Pittsburgh went there in round 1 no matter what. Somehow, should Ty Simpson slip to their spot in round 2, which most people would be surprised by, he would be square in the conversation at that point in time. But I do not expect Pittsburgh to select a quarterback in the first round. I do expect them to pick a quarterback somewhere in this draft, but more likely in the middle rounds.
Adam Schefter with the latest as we head into the draft in Pittsburgh. Thank you, my friend. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Jay.
Back on the Sports Center, Hannah Storm, Jay Harris, and the NFL. The Giants, one of 6 teams with 2 picks in the first round of the draft. Their own at number 5 and the 10th pick they got from Cincinnati in the Dexter Lawrence trade. Our Peter Schrager has New York taking Ohio State edge rusher Arvell Reese at 5 and then receiver Jordan Tyson at 10. And let us say hello to our NFL reporter, Kimberly Martin, who is covering the Giants for the draft. Kimberly, after 18 years building draft plans with the Ravens, John Harbaugh now working closely with new voices, including GM Joe Schoen with the Giants. What can you share about that dynamic and the Giants' plans for their 2 top 10 picks?
Well, Jay, it's good to see you. The big question everybody has surrounding the Giants is who's actually running this draft? Will it be the GM, Joe Schoen, or John Harbaugh? And I can tell you, after spending time here in this building, there are 2 words that stand out to me: constant communication. And here's another one: collaboration. They understand that they have 2 picks in the top 10 currently, and right now Joe Schoen, their GM, and head coach John Harbaugh are constantly talking over their board, going over things. In fact, on Monday, I was told a quick John Harbaugh pop into Joe Schoen's office turned into a 2-hour conversation of them running through, quote, 1 million different scenarios of their draft board, until finally they looked at each other and said, you know what, all right, let's call it a night, let's go to sleep and attack it tomorrow. And I can tell you, as of yesterday around noon, their board was pretty much set. We don't know who they're going to pick, but unlike in previous years, Jay, the Giants feel confident that they're going to get 2 quality players on night 1.
Yeah, they got needs at offensive line, linebacker, pass rush, especially since they sent Dexter Lawrence to Cincinnati. All right, Kimberly Martin, my friend, thank you so much. Let's go over to Hannah.
She's my friend, too.
No, she's my friend first.
The Cowboys also have 2 picks in the first round. They select at 12 and 20. No mystery as to what they need. They were second in the NFL in offensive yards per game, but they were a fat 30th in yards allowed per game. The Big D, they need help on defense. And this draft is nice and deep with defensive talent, but that's not where we start as we join NFL reporter Jeff Darlington covering the Cowboys in Frisco, Texas. And Jeff, you got a little news today. George Pickens playing under the franchise tag. What more can you tell us about why the boys made this decision?
Well, this was an interesting one, Hannah, because the Cowboys actually were holding their pre-draft press conference. 30 minutes into it, former President Bill Clinton showed up in the room and greeted Jerry Jones. I bring all of this up to say that it was a pretty big distraction before, 34 minutes into the press conference, Stephen Jones then told the assembled media that they would not be negotiating with George Pickens on his franchise tag, that he would instead play on that tag this coming year. The reason, of course, that is significant is because Dallas is now going into this draft as a defensive needy team. The question becomes, will they consider a wide receiver given the uncertainty that now faces them with Pickens? I was mentioning the idea of President Clinton being in the room because this was not a situation where the Cowboys were being strategic about announcing the Pickens situation. It simply came up midway through. It made it even more interesting on a day when, you know, it's never a dull moment here at the Star.
I know. I saw Bill Clinton. He was at the Boston Marathon on Monday. His daughter Chelsea was running. So he's making the rounds with all of his sports activities. Yeah. Okay. The Cowboys viewed by some as a potential trade-up candidate. Obviously, you've heard all of that talk, and they have so many needs at DB and linebacker, D-line. I mean, literally every level of the defense. Are you hearing any talk about them potentially moving up the board?
They could move up, they could move down, they could stay put. I mean, Jerry Jones really did lay it out, and it felt in an honest way that they do sit in this position with those 2 first-round picks, that there's a lot of moves they can make. This is a very defensive-needed team. We just talked about that. Linebackers, pass rushers, defensive backs. They need it all. But Jerry made very clear as well that they could still draft offense like they did back in 2020 when they were also a defensive-needy team. But at the 17th overall pick, CeeDee Lamb was there, so they chose him. So it goes back to what I was saying about Pickens. Yes, it feels like the odds would be that they'll pick defense at least one of those 2 first-round picks. They could also trade up to get a star defensive player, but they could stay put and go offense. I know I'm not giving you answers. Yeah. I would just say that this is a very interesting place to be for this draft.
If you had answers, I'd be like, Jeff's lying. He's not telling the truth.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't know anything right now, which is kind of what makes it so much fun. JD, thanks. As always, we'll talk to you soon.
All right, SportsCenter on the road, back at the draft. Good to have a few minutes with our NFL analyst, Peter Schrager, in Pittsburgh. Peter, you released your final mock draft today, and you, sir, have a major shakeup in round one because you have the Cowboys trading the 12th and 20th overall picks to the Chiefs for picks 9 and 29. Your mock projects Dallas taking cornerback Mansour Delane and edge Malachi Lawrence, while Kansas City selects Reuben Bain Jr. and Omar Cooper Jr. So why does this make sense for both sides, Peter?
Well, Jay, great to be with you. I look at the Dallas Cowboys, and there are some elite defensive prospects in this draft, but you can only put them on a hand, and that's about 5 guys. And it's Downs, it's Bailey, it's Reese, it's Styles, and then it's Mansour Delane as that big corner prospect. If the Cowboys are looking to get a big defensive superstar in this draft, which is what they were hoped to get when they made the trades that got them to the 12 and 20, they can't just sit pretty at 12. Now, we have heard from Steven, we've heard from Jerry. Of course, you're going to get Will McClay, who's in the mix, and we've got a head coach and a defensive coordinator in in Christian Parker, who are going to have voices on this. But if the Cowboys sit at 12 and 20, none of those guys are going to fall to them. And the Chiefs, they're looking for 2 contributors. And if they get one at 9 and 29, they're probably not getting a 29 that's going to start right away or be an impact player. But at 20, you can. This one's almost too clean. I know both teams have been on the phones with each other and with other teams around the league just about exploratory talks. In my mock draft, in my NFL world, I've got them pulling off this deal, and I've got Mansour Delane, the LSU corner, going to the Cowboys at 9th overall. Okay,
Mark it down. We'll see if it happens. All right, let's talk about some reporting from our Adam Schefter. He says an A.J. Brown trade to the Patriots post-June 1st is now quite likely. Philly's been active acquiring receivers, but this year's draft class is deep at the receiver position. So what are you hearing about the Eagles' plans?
Eagles are interesting because, yes, they have this need at wide receiver if you're going to move on from A.J. Brown, which has not officially happened yet. But they also might have needs at offensive line. In this draft in particular, there is a good crop of offensive linemen, both interior and on the outside, at the tackle position. Lane Johnson, 36 years old, doesn't have much football left in him after this season. You'd think that they would eventually want to rebuild that. I have them going with an offensive lineman at 23, but there is a chance that Omar Cooper is still on the board, Casey Concepcion is still on the board, and Denzel Boston, 3 wide receivers who will go on day 1, could be sitting there with the Eagles pick. So I would look at wide receiver and offensive tackle, 2 areas that this happens to be a pretty good first round with, where someone sitting in the 20s